Hello boys and girls, my name is Kristian Kohle and today I want to talk about recording vocals. Recording vocals is something really serious, that's why I'm dressed like this, by the way.
Down by the sea, you would scream my name. And up in the sky, you could see me flying. Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea? Don't you wanna grab me to make me feel? Ain't you gonna scream to make me stay? Ain't you gonna make the pain go away? Go away. I'm never gonna stop. No. I'm never gonna say goodbye. I'm never gonna stop. No. Until the world knows why.
I want to talk about microphones, I want to talk about microphone preamps, and I want to talk about compressors. I want to show you my current go-to vocal signal path. And right now it is actually the most affordable vocal chain that I've used so far. You can see parts of it right here. And more importantly, I want to explain why and how I choose certain gear for recording. Why I choose a certain microphone, why I choose a certain preamp or a certain compressor. And on top of that, I just had a great vocal session with my man Alan from Dimitri, so we're also gonna hear some of that session. You will hear that vocal signal path in action and I will show you how I tweak it. That's a lot of fun. Let's get started. Here we go. But what is the most important part of the signal chain when we record vocals? It's quite easy. So it starts with the most important part, that is a source, and then it just gets less and less important. That's different with other sources, like with guitars, where the cabinet or the speaker might be more important than the amp or even the guitar. Or with a metal kick drum, where the EQ might be more important than the mic preamp, and so on. But with vocals, it's quite easy. It starts with the source, the most important part, and then it just gets less and less important. So let's talk about the source. It simply means the better your singer sounds and the better he performs, the better your vocal track will be. Sounds like a stupid cliche, but it's true. So that means if you have a singer that sounds great and performs great, you're probably not gonna end up with a shitty sounding vocal track. It's as easy as that. So the more you can do to make the source sound great, the better it is, because that is the most effective thing to change. That means if you can choose between two singers, take the one that sounds better. But I know in the real world, we don't have much time, and most of the time we cannot choose the singer. We have to live with the given singer. But still here, take your time to improve his performance as much as you can as an engineer or as a producer. I'm not the type of guy who will push singers a lot, because I feel like most of the time that's just scares them and kills the atmosphere of the session. But what I do is I try to analyze them all the time and I try to give them as much feedback as possible. And whenever I find something especially positive, I will give them an immediate feedback and tell them, hey, that last take was a lot better. It sounded more intimate. Maybe because you were singing softer, I could hear your breathing a lot better. That helps the track. Try that again. So the more feedback they get from you, especially the more positive feedback they get from you, the more confident they will become and the more they are in control of their voice. And with some singers that might not be necessary, but with most of them, if you guide them like that, your vocal tracks will sound a lot better. So take your time to guide them. And that's actually more important, to have enough time here than to waste a lot of time testing different microphones, different preamps and so on. Because most singers are not comfortable with that. Usually I'm trying 2 or 3 microphones and that's all, because I don't want to annoy the singer or bore him with endless gear tests. You know, all the singers in the studio, most of the time they're really nervous and they just want to perform. So don't stop them, let them do their thing. So that means we really have to know our gear. I might be able to try 2 microphones, but I'm usually not able to try different mic preamps or other processes. So I have to rely on what I think will work on that session. And that again means I have to know the gear. I have to be experienced. So it's important to really test your gear whenever you have the time. So you know how certain microphones, how certain mic preamps sound, so you grab the right stuff when the session starts. Let's talk about the next thing, and that is the room. And the room is also quite important. It will color the sound of your recording. I'm both recording in a well-treated vocal booth right here next door, but I'm also, like today, I'm recording in my drum live room, a much bigger room, and that's just a very different sound. So of course you will get a lot more ambience from the live room, which you usually don't hear that much in a dense metal mix. But let's say in a more intimate arrangement, like a singer-songwriter thing, you can really hear that room, which might be good or bad. Overall, in a bigger room, the bass sounds a little more linear. In a vocal booth, it tends to be a little thicker, which can be good or bad, again, whatever. But what I want you to do is, in case you have several rooms to work in, try them all, do a sound check everywhere, try to understand how they sound. And then again, knowing your gear, knowing your rooms will help you to make the right decision when the singer is there, because then you don't have the time anymore to do a lot of tests. Next up is the microphone. And of course, the microphone has a huge influence on our vocal sound. And people use totally different microphones for vocals. For example, I have never used any of those very, very typical vocal microphones. Let's say Neumann U87 or Neumann U47 type of microphones. I love 87s on guitar amps combined with a 57 or sometimes as drum overheads, but they always sound a little too honky for me on vocals. AKG C12 microphones, usually a little too bright for my taste. Other people love it. What I'm saying is, it depends on what you do. It depends on your style, your genre. It depends on the singer you are recording. So to pick the right vocal microphone, you have to analyze who you are working with, and you have to analyze how you want to sound. So what am I recording? I'm recording anything from, let's say, alternative rock, Nickelback or something, type of voices, up to the most extreme, guttural, brutal stuff in death metal or pig squeals and everything in between. And what do all those vocals have in common? Yes, they are loud, they are edgy, they are aggressive sounding. And we need a microphone that can take that kind of sound, that can tame the beast, so to say. So we don't want something that sounds too detailed, that sounds too intimate, that has too much high end and too much upper mids, because that will just sound annoying and too aggressive. I think that is one of the reasons why the Shure SM7B is so popular, not because it's very detailed and not because of the frequency spectrum, which sounds more like a mid-tunnel or something. It's not a great sounding microphone, but it can take everything you throw at it, even the most extreme stuff. The opposite of that microphone would be something like a Brauner microphone. Have you ever worked with Brauner microphones? Beautiful sounding microphones. That VMA has a beautiful low end, for example, but they just sound horrible and extremely aggressive in a bad way, in an annoying way on, let's say, harsher rock vocals. They produce like overtones. You hear a lot of parts of the voice that you don't want to hear. A lot of ringing, it almost sounds like a feedback or something. And that is something you can't really tame with EQ. So those microphones are just too detailed, too harsh sounding for what I do. They might be cool on an intimate ballad vocal or something like that. But Brauner microphones on metal and rock vocals have never worked for me. Again, it's not a matter of quality. A lot of the very, very detailed microphones. I have a Microtech Gefell microphone here, for example, a tube mic for 3,000 euros. Very, very detailed, but it's showing me a lot of details that I don't need to hear, from a death metal singer. A lot of mouth and lip and throat noises that I simply don't need, Glenn Benton is not Whitney Houston. Let's go back to the SM7B. The SM7B is a great microphone, especially if you want to hold it in your hands. But I have been searching for something that works just as good as the SM7B on harsh vocals. So it never sounds too extreme. You never have to deal with too much top-end information that you are fighting later in the mix. Because, by the way, for me, it's much easier to add some top-end later than to remove the harshness of a Browner microphone, for example. So I was looking for a microphone that can do the SM7 thing, but sounds a little more detailed and with a little more hi-fi sounding frequency spectrum. So, yeah. SM7B as a condenser, so to say. That's what I was looking for. And I found two microphones that fall into that category. I've been using one of them for years, and the other one, I've just started using it recently, and I really love it. So let me show you those microphones. These are my old and my new favorite. For everything vocals, more or less. Maybe except for very, very soft and intimate vocals. By the way, I'm planning to do another video on exactly that, where I will be using some very, very expensive and very different sounding microphones for recording, an intimate ballad, which is the opposite of what I record most of the time, which is screaming, yelling, and stuff like that. Anyway, let's talk about those two microphones. So I have been using this one for many, many years. This is a Neumann TLM 193. Don't confuse it with the Neumann TLM 103, which sounds much harsher and is not good for what we do here. So this microphone is a very safe bet. It just works for any aggressive vocals, if you ask me. It sounds very linear. It takes EQ well if you need more highs. And it sounds detailed enough. Just a great sounding mic. It is more like promoted as a classic instrumental microphone or something. And it sounds very close to the U89, which shares the same mid-sized capsule. Great microphone. But here's my new favorite. And this one is from Austrian Audio, a pretty new company formed by ex-AKG people in Vienna. This one is called OC818. And is a wonderful sounding microphone. It shares all the qualities I've told you about the Neumann microphone. It just sounds a little brighter and a little more open. And since I boost some highs most of the time during the mixdown, this comes in quite handy. And I have done 3 or 4 vocal sessions with this one now, and I love the results. I haven't done any death metal vocals with this one yet, but I'm sure it's gonna work great. So it sounds a little more in your face, it sounds a little more intimate without being harsh. It also takes EQ really well. Really, really versatile microphone. But this microphone doesn't only sound great, it has a lot more cool features that the Neumann microphone doesn't have. First of all, it's a multi-pattern microphone, which makes it a lot more versatile. You don't really need that for vocals, maybe, but wait a minute. It has a pad, it has a filter built in. The Neumann microphone has nothing like that. So you can even use this on a snare because it can pretty much take any level. You can use it on drums, on guitar cabs, you can use it everywhere. Where the Neumann microphone, because it has no pad, is a little more picky. But this is we're just getting started. They have some really, really innovative shit built in. There's another output here where you can record the backside of the capsule. And then you can later, in the mix, fine-tune the polar pattern of the mic, which is really cool. So you can go from whatever, from Omni to Figure of 8 to Cardioid, whatever you need. So very interesting, for example, for drum overheads to fine-tune the balance between the cymbals. But it gets even more fancy because it's a multi-pattern plugin. So you can have whatever, the bass as an Omni and then the highs in Cardioid to avoid the proximity effect, for example. You can really fine-tune how the mic hears the room. And that is truly innovative. I haven't really tried this, but I'm planning to get another one and make a comparison with my AKG C414 on drum overheads. Let me know if you want to see that. So, dear Austrian Audio, send me a microphone. I need another one. Can you do that? Thanks. By the way, no one is paying me for this video today. Nobody. I just like this stuff. So, This is a very modern approach. This is a very versatile microphone. If you don't have the money for this one and you want to try it, they also make a cardioid only version. And I think this one is around 1,000 euros, and the cardioid only version, so if you just want to record vocals, cardioid only version, which sounds exactly the same. That's what they tell me. You can even use this one and the cardioid only version as a stereo pair. Costs, I think, half of what the Neumann costs. The Neumann is, I think, 1,300 or something euros, and the cardioid only version of the Austrian is half of that, 650 or something. So I can recommend both microphones. They both sound great. The Austrian sounds a little more open, but it has a lot more features. So you can use it a lot on a lot more sources. I like it when companies are innovative, as long as their stuff also sounds good. After many years, I finally found a microphone that is just as cool as the Neumann. So that is the microphone. Keep in mind that it depends on your source and your style. There are people recording with Sony C800 microphones, vocals, and it sounds great. Way too harsh for me. My style is to record with a more neutral sounding microphone, detailed enough for the voice, but not not too harsh in the high end, because I can do that later. That is safer than recording with a very harsh, or let's call it open sounding microphone, where you have to fight the harshness later. That's how I do it. You might do it differently. But if you're looking for a microphone like that, because you are recording people like I do, who have very nasty and aggressive and edgy voices, those microphones will round the edge of and will make it sit nicely in a mix, but will sound a little more hi-fi and a little more expensive maybe than an SM7B, which is still a great microphone. So that's all about the microphones. Let's move on and talk about microphone preamps. Well, the differences are smaller than you might think. We do have a lot of different mic preamps here, especially my colleague Kai has a lot of them. Maybe I should do a video where I compare them all. Let me know if you want to see that. You will be surprised how small the differences are. I used to mainly use two mic pre's, and those were my API mic pre's, which have a certain tendency to sound a little more aggressive or forward sounding or something. And the other one was an old Drummer 1960 preamp. Maybe it's just badly designed or something, but it always sounded like it was slowing down everything that sounded a little too harsh. But again, compared to microphones, microphone preamps are a lot less important, unless you start driving them. So once you start distorting the preamps, you get that character. But the subtle differences you hear in preamps is mostly nothing that is really important in a dense and crowded metal mix. So we can push a Neve preamp and you will get a distortion out of it. But you know what? I don't do that. I never push my preamps during the recording, during the vocal recording at least, because first of all, it's really hard to tell how much distortion you want. And once the distortion is there, you can't remove it. So I prefer to play safe and to add distortion later in the mix, or even play back the track through a preamp if I want that distortion. That is much safer. On top of that, I have never liked it how distorted mic preamps sound during the recording, because the vocals are totally uncompressed. So you will have certain words and syllables suddenly saturating and distorting. And for me, that always sounded out of control in a bad way. You get that fuzzy low end distortion on some syllables, and I just don't like it. So at some point, I decided to go for a really clean sounding preamp. And here's what I found. I found those lovely Cranborne audio preamps. They sound so clean and they don't distort and they have no noise. I really fell in love with them, basically because, first of all, if you don't want that, they have no sound. They're really versatile. You can connect line, mic, or high Z gear, so you can plug in your guitar or bass and the DI sounds great. You can use line signals. We will be doing that in a minute. Or, of course, microphones. The only thing I don't like about this preamp, hello Cranborne, is that it has no pad. So if you have a loud signal with a loud microphone, you might clip your converters if you don't have a pad in between. That's a little bummer. So please add a pad in an update. It's not actually the Cranborne preamp itself. It is very distortion free and it can take all those levels, but it's usually getting a little too hot But that only happens if you have a very hot microphone, condenser microphone on, let's say, a guitar cab or something, then, but otherwise, great preamp. Because if you want some color, they have added this lovely Mojo feature, and that is so innovative. It's an analog circuit. I don't know what they're doing. It's not EQ, and you've got two modes. One is called thump, one is called cream. I will show you both of them in a minute on those vocals. And the cool thing is you can go from really subtle to quite extreme, and it's not that level dependent like a normal distortion. So you can just add this without changing the overall level too much. And it's much easier to judge if you want that sound or not during the sound check. Then again, you can go back with a line signal. You just switch to line here, so you can use the Mojo feature after the recording. I told you, I prefer not to use too much color and distortion on vocal tracks during the recording, but with this feature, it's quite easy because, first of all, it doesn't change the level too much, and it doesn't seem too level dependent. So it's not only clipping like the louder words, but it's like it seems to be working on the entire dynamic range of the vocals. So it's cool. I use it a lot more on drums though, but on vocals it can be nice as well. We will hear that in a minute. So it seems like with the Cranborne preamp I'm getting best of both worlds. So it's a super extremely clean preamp and very noiseless, which is important for recording the eyes if you want to reamp later. Noise is also important. Let's say you want to record acoustic guitars, like a quiet acoustic guitar with a small diaphragm condenser. Every dB matters. Really clean sounding preamp, but if you want, you can add the Mojo if you need it. You can connect all kinds of gear, guitars, line gear, keyboard, microphones. Now just add a pad and then I'm perfectly happy. But this is a great piece of equipment. Check out the Camden preamp from Cranborne Audio. Next up is the compressor. And the first thing you might ask is, do we really need a hardware compressor during the tracking? Because you might have like thousands of plug-in compressors in your DAW, all kinds of compression, So do we really need that? It's expensive. And isn't what you said about distortion coming from the mic pre also right about compression? Isn't it smarter and safer to add compression later in the mix and not in the heat of the moment, in the heat of the recording session? Good question. But the answer is no. For several reasons. First of all, it's just very nice to have a compressed tracks, like a bunch of compressed vocal tracks that sit right in a mix. When you start mixing, it just helps. And believe me, there can't be too much compression. I usually compress during the tracking up to 10 dB or something, and then I compress again. In a dense rock and metal mix, that's what you need. So don't be afraid of compression. There can be the wrong compression maybe, but if you use the right compression, there can't be too much. Don't be afraid of it, but that's only one part. The other part is, and that is much more important, that most of the singers, or probably every singer, will perform a lot better when being compressed during the recording. Because when they hear the compressed voice, they will hear more details of their own voice, and they will be capable to control their singing a lot better. They're not going to fight the dense mix. If you don't compress them at all, they will probably try to sing like with more power on the softer parts, which will ruin the emotion there. And they're not going to give full power on the heavy parts because it feels too loud, So compressing them during the tracking just makes it sound like a record and makes them feel comfortable and makes them hear everything a lot more detailed, a lot more precise, and makes them perform better. And again, it's nice to have compressed tracks, that you can turn on a mix and it already sounds like something. You're closer to the final thing. But you might argue, why don't you just compress the monitor of the singer? And that's a good question. There's another function, another advantage that compression gives us, because it makes recording a lot safer. First of all, you don't have to ride the fader all the time to prevent clipping your converters or just to be able to hear the singer. That's what you have to do if you don't compress. Believe me, what I record goes from whispering to full screaming. So if I don't compress there, in order to hear everything precisely, I have to ride the fader all the time. Otherwise I get distortion or I don't hear the quieter parts. It's just not fun. Compression makes it easier not only for the singer, but also for me to understand what's going on and to concentrate on the musical performance. And that means I hardly have to ride the fader anymore. I only have to do that if it gets really quiet. I forgot to say one thing. That's a really handy feature that the Cranborne preamp has. Listen. It's stepped. So this is so cool. So you can, like, for the whispering, you can go 2 steps up and then you go down again on the other parts. It's very easy to recall the exact settings of a recording session. Really cool. And it's a lot easier to get a precise stereo image on stereo tracks, like the same amount of amplification on both sides. Really cool feature, and it sounds nice. Sounds nice, right? So that's compression. You want compression because it makes your life easier, it makes the singer's life easier, and it just, you know, it looks sexy if the meters are moving, let's be honest. But which kind of compression do we want? Well, in the tracking stage, we want something that is invisible, that sounds like somebody riding the fader. And I'm pretty cliche here. What do we use for vocal compression? Yeah, optical compressors. And that's what I use. Because it's the safest thing, you know. You can go to up to 10, 12 dB of compression and it doesn't sound compressed through a good optical compressor. And there are 2 options that I have here. I have one clean option and I have one, let's call it colored option. The clean one is the Empirical Labs Distressor, a classic compressor, a real legend that I have been using for 10, 15 years. And I'm using the opto mode on the distressor. And some of the smart guys among you will say, but hey, that's not a real optical compressor, which is correct. It's just a VCA compressor emulating the behavior of an opto cell. But I don't give a fuck because it sounds great. It's a really clean sounding, gentle compression that works amazing for recording vocals. So if you want a total, like, no-brainer vocal tracking compressor, get a distressor in opto mode, turn off the distortion modes, and maybe turn on some of the sidechain filters. Works like a charm. It's just not exactly cheap. A distressor, I think it's around 1,700 or 800 euros right now over here in Europe. So that is a lot of money for one channel of compression. So there's something else I can recommend to you, which also works really well. And you can see it here. This is the Vocal Leveler from Tegeler Audio Manufaktur from Berlin here in Germany. And that is actually a true optical compressor. And I can already tell you, it sounds a lot more colorful, a lot more dirty than the distressor. So if that's what you want, like a touch of color, of harmonics, of saturation, but in a very controlled way compared to a preamp, this might be interesting. Also, it's like, I don't know, the 500 module is, I think, 600 euros or something. So it's close to a third of the price of a distressor. The cool thing about optical compression is that it's very idiot-proof to dial in. There's nothing you have to do. You just have to say, I want more compression. Boom. And that's it. And this one also has like a fast and an auto setting. I usually have it in the fast setting on vocals. Works like a charm. Really nice. You have to be a bit more careful with the gain staging because you can run into distortion easily, which might be what you want or not what you want. The distortion is rather nice and very sexy sounding. I will show you in a minute. But that is a nice compressor that I've just like found half a year ago or something. And I've been using it quite a lot since then. Bringing a lot of color to my life. Okay, so that's the Tegeler. We will hear it in action in a minute. Next thing you see here is a de-esser. And that is a classic from DBX, the 520. Do we really need that? No, you can track without a de-esser and you can do that later in the DAW. But I really love the DBX de-esser. You know, you can shave off 4 or 6 dB of sibilance already, and you're gonna need a lot more de-essing anyway. It's like with compression. So why not do it right here and already have a pre-processed track, and you need less processing in the DAW. I really like how they work. On top of that, the cool thing about DBX is there's no threshold. So you just set the amount of de-essing you want, and it will take care of the rest. It's a pretty smart unit. You just press those two buttons, dial in the right frequency and the right amount you want, and it's idiot-proof. I like idiot-proof stuff, especially for tracking, you know? Same with the compression as with the de-essing. And it's not expensive. The DBX stuff is actually pretty affordable. Okay, what about EQing? That's the last thing. And I have to say, EQing is something that can be done later. So I hardly EQ vocals when I record them. Why? I only do that when I know I really, really need something. That might be some boosted higher frequencies. That's the only thing I do twice a year. And then I use a pull tech, a hardware pull tech for that. Unlike compression, which I have been explaining you in the last 10 minutes or something, unlike compression, there's no real difference whether you EQ now or later for me. So EQing is not important here right now. But what we're gonna do now, boys and girls, is listen to some vocals. Like I told you, I've just tracked some vocals with Alan from Dimitri, and they have just released their debut album in English. They are from Czech Republic. Usually they sing in Czech. Now they have an English album. There's a link below. Check it out. Today we're listening to a classic power ballad, and I asked him to just sing the verse and the bridge again. It's just one take or two takes or something. There's no correction there. There's no auto-tune there. It's just a rough track. And I have recorded this track without any processing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to play that track back into my Cranborne rack here. We're going to go into the line input of the Cranborne Camden preamp. We can listen to the mojo. Then we will go into the compression, finally into the de-esser and back. And then you can hear the difference. So let's have a listen to the rough vocals.
Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea? Don't you wanna grab me to make me feel?
And now let's send them into the rack.
Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea? Don't you wanna grab me to make me feel?
Now I want to start with the mojo feature. So you see there are two styles. One style is the cream, and I hardly use it on vocals. I use it on drums mostly and sometimes on guitars. It can add a lot of distortion, and it kind of carves out the lower mid-range. And it can go from subtle to very extreme. Let's have a listen.
Scream to make me stay. Ain't you gonna make the pain go away? Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea? Don't you wanna grab me to make me feel? Ain't you gonna scream to make...
Let's check out the thumb feature. I really like that one on vocals. It adds some low end, but also makes things sound a little more compact, whatever they do there. It's nice, and I tend to use it together with the high pass filter. Let's have a listen.
To make me stay. Ain't you gonna make the pain go away? Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea? Don't you wanna grab me?
Things just get a little thicker, and yeah, things sound a little more compact, so it sits better in the mix.
Ain't you gonna make the pain go away? Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea?
So that's already quite nice. So now we will be hitting the Tegeler vocal leveler. And first thing I want to show you is the saturation or the distortion it can produce. So by not adding any gain reduction here, like no compression at all, and by driving the input of the Tegeler vocal leveler, we can hear the distortion, and it's not subtle.
The pain go away. Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea? Don't you wanna grab me to make me feel?
That's already a lot.
Ain't you gonna scream to make me stay? Ain't you gonna make the pain go away?
And the interesting part is that the distortion comes from the fat circuit that sits at the end of the compressor. So we go into an input transformer first, then we go into the optocell compressing, and then we go into that transistor. And that transistor emulates, I think, a tube circuit or something, but this is actually adding the color and the distortion. So we can influence that distortion, that color, by either the input gain, we do it here by adding more gain in the Camden, or by adjusting the gain reduction. And the thing is, the more gain reduction you add, the less you distort the signal. It's kind of unusual, but this is how it works. So let's add some gain reduction. Boom.
From reaching the sea, don't you wanna grab me to make me feel? Ain't you gonna scream to make me stay? Ain't you gonna make the pain go away?
And that's around 7 dB of compression already, fully cranked, really nice. We could go further, but I think I don't need that. I can also hear a nice saturation. Let's try the fast setting instead.
Make me stay. Ain't you gonna make the pain go away? Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea? Don't you wanna grab me?
And now you can hear the compression a lot more, but I kind of like this on vocals.
Scream to make me stay. Ain't you gonna make the pain go away? Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea? Don't you wanna...
Now we just have to compensate the gain reduction with the output.
Gonna scream to make me stay. Ain't you gonna make the pain go away?
But now we hear that because of the compression, we have more sibilance. And that's what we got the DBX de-esser for, of course. And it is so easy to dial in. You always make sure you're using this high filter only mode because it just sounds more subtle and a lot better. Enable it, find the right frequency, typically around 3K or something, and the right amount of de-essing. So let's fully crank it. Let's see what happens.
Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea? Don't you wanna grab me to make me feel? Ain't you gonna scream to make me stay? Ain't you gonna make the pain go away? Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea?
We have whatever, 10 dB of compression and the de-essing. And this sounds a lot more like a record. And one really interesting thing about that Tegeler saturation is that it seems to shave off the negative side of the waveform. You can really see that saturation in the waveforms if you look at the files. I even asked Tegeler if this is correct and they confirmed. They said, yes, that saturation will carve off one side of the waveform. That's how we want it. And it will add even order harmonics to your signal. So that's the distortion we've been listening to. But let's make it a little cleaner and compare it to the unprocessed version. We start with processed and then I switch.
Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea? Don't you wanna grab me to make me feel? Ain't you gonna scream to make me stay? Ain't you gonna make the pain go away?
And wow, such a difference. That sounds so much more like a record. It's not only the dynamics, but the overall frequency response. The unprocessed signals just sound a little honky and thinner and out of control. Let's have another listen. Start with processed.
Don't you wanna grab me to make me feel? Ain't you gonna scream to make me stay?
One more time. The difference is huge.
Don't you wanna grab me to make me feel? Ain't you gonna scream to make me stay?
This just sounds wrong now. Interesting, right? And so here you can see how much a good vocal recording chain actually affects the sound of your recordings. This sounds so much more mix ready, right? And this is so much more fun to work with if your tracks sound like this from the start. And it's not a lot of work, you know, because you need to record the vocals anyway. So you can twist a few knobs and make them sound better already. It's good for you, it's good for the singer. Wow. If we listen to the bridge, I think it's probably a lot more extreme. Let's start with processed.
Go away. I'm never gonna stop. No. I'm never gonna say goodbye. I'm never gonna stop. No. Until the world knows why. I'm never gonna stop. No. I'm never gonna say goodbye.
So this part doesn't really work without compression. And it's no fun to record a part like this without any compression, believe me. Okay, next thing I want to do, and that is already prepared. I want to add a little EQ. Look at this one. Let's solo the track again, turn off the reverb. Want to add some highs, take out some honk 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 in the middle and add some low end.
I'm never gonna stop. Let's overcome all lies. Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea? Don't you wanna grab me to make me feel? Ain't you gonna scream to make me stay? Ain't you gonna make the pain go away?
Can you hear my live room now through the compression?
Ain't you gonna make the pain go away?
With the EQ, here we go.
Don't you wanna stop me from reaching the sea? Don't you wanna grab me to make me feel? Ain't you gonna scream to make me stay? Ain't you gonna make the pain go away?
So that is incredibly nice. Once again, it's not a lot of work. It's easy. Just get the right gear and yeah, recording will be more fun. Let me sum it up one more time, what we've been doing here. So I've been telling you which microphones I like. I especially want to recommend this one because it's a lot cheaper than the Neumann, the Austrian Audio OC818, and has a lot more bells and whistles and cool whatever. And and there's also a cardioid only version if you only want to record vocals. Versatile microphone, very warm and linear sounding. It's just great. You've heard it. And we're going into a Camden 500 preamp, which is best of both worlds for me because it can sound clean and it can add a lot of mojo, like you've just heard. We just heard that lovely combination of the mojo with the saturation coming from the Tegeler vocal leveler, which is our next device here, which is a very nice sounding optical compressor that adds a lot of warmth and saturation and color. Really nice. If you want something cleaner, I can recommend the Empirical Labs Distressor in opto mode. Even if it's not a real opto compressor, it still sounds great. But this is like the colored and dirty version of it. So in case you like what you're hearing, this is cool. You can ride like the distortion and the saturation with the input and with the gain reduction. You have to get used to it, but it's still a lot easier and a lot more effective in a way than doing this with a preamp, which is a lot more out of control and a lot more level dependent in a way. Finally, we're hitting a DBX 520 that I bought a few weeks ago because I wanted to have a hardware de-esser again, because I'm de-essing like the shit out of everything anyway later. So why not take off a few dB of sibilant material right from the start? They are all hooked up together in my Cranborne Audio 500 rack, but you can use any other rack for a vocal chain like this. The Cranborne has it's also a USB interface and has a lot of additional dingle dongle dongle. But yeah, this vocal chain, I think, sounds great. Is pretty affordable if you ask me. Yeah, some of you might say, but this is a professional channel, What else? I want you to leave a comment. Let me know which microphones you use. SM7B? Probably. Or let me know, what do you think about this video? Do you like driving preamps hard? Which compressors do you like? Show me your vocal path. I want you to subscribe to this channel as usual, ring the bell, blah, 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 the usual stuff. And I'm looking forward to see you on my Discord server. Looking forward to seeing you checking out the files and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm kind of getting lost. So, thanks for watching. Say hello to your grandma as usual. I see you in hell, motherfuckers. Bye-bye.